Hi, and welcome to day 2 of functions. Before we get started on graphing absolute values and going over domain and range today, open your packet to page 6 and do questions 1 and 2 on the bottom of the page. Pause the video now and turn to page 6 and answer the 2 questions on the bottom. Now question 1 is asking for the value of k that would result in the graph of g of x. I made g of x blue on my graph and f of x red. If they want to know how we went from the red graph to the blue graph, you should be looking at the vertex and determining which way it shifted. To go from the red to the blue, you would need to realize that this graph went down 2. If it went down 2, that would mean that your k value would be equal to -2, making your answer choice 4. If you want to see if you're correct, if you go to your f of k equation and add -2 or just subtract 2, you would end up with the quadratic x squared minus 6x plus 7. If you were to take and type that into your calculator, you will get the graph of g of x. So always go back and check your work. But again, if you're shifting down 2, that's why it has to be a -2. Question number 2, the correct answer is choice 3. Now for this one, it is not a shift 5, which some people pick because they see the 5 here. To do this question, you are not comparing it to the parent function at 0, 0. You would need to take and graph both parabolas first. So you would have your f of x, and then you would also have your g of x, and you're always comparing the vertex when you're looking at this. When you're comparing the vertex, you're going to notice that it was a shift to the right 3. Therefore, your answer is choice 2. Using regular graph paper and counting the boxes will make this a little bit easier. Now we're going to get started on the new lesson, which is on page 7. So turn to page 7, which is on graphing absolute values. Now in the top right-hand corner of your paper, it does say to type y equals into your calculator, copy down a table of values, plot the points, don't forget arrows and labeling. So you're going to be graphing y equals the absolute value of x. To get the absolute value, one way to do it is to hit alpha window, and if you hit alpha window, you're going to get the ABS button. So go to your calculator now and type in y equals the absolute value of x. Then look at your table, and on your table, just like with a parabola, your y values should be matching up with your vertex in the middle. So in this case, you would be wanting to make a table that goes from -3 to +3. Your y values are 3, 2, 1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. Now you're going to want to take and plot those points. So -3, 3, -2, 2, -1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, and 3, 3. Since it is an absolute value, you should realize that this should be a V shape. Always hit the graph button and see what your graph should look like. Since they're not giving you the domain, meaning they're not telling you where to start and where to stop, be sure to extend your lines and label it y equals the absolute value of x. Now y equals the absolute value of x. This is called the parent function. The parent function will always have its vertex at 0, 0, which you will always be comparing the shift to. On the bottom it says the graph of the absolute value function looks like a V. It could be an upside down V if it's a reflection, but all absolute value graphs will be in the shape of a V. Look at question number 3, which is below this. Question number 3 wants y equals the absolute value of x plus 3. So go to your calculator, type in y equals, now hit alpha window, and the very first one says ABS, so hit enter, x plus 3. Hit second graph to look at your table, and then you need to make sure that your y values are matching up on the top and on the bottom. For this one, you're going to want to be graphing it from -6 to 0. -6, -5, -4, -3, -2, -1, and 0. Your y values are 3, 2, 1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. Again, your vertex will be in the middle of your table, just like it would be for a parabola, and you're going to notice that it's symmetrical, so your top and bottom y values should be the same. So to graph this, now you're going to want to plot your points, -6, 3, -5, 2, -4, 1, -3, 0, -2, 1, -1, 2, and 0, 3. Again, be sure to extend your lines, putting arrows on the end because they're not giving you the domain, and label it y equals the absolute value of x plus 3. Now, you're always, again, when they're talking about a shift, comparing it to 0, 0. In this case, my new vertex has shifted to the left 3. The reason is, by a Hyovos, the inside number moves it left or right in the opposite direction. So in the opposite direction, a +3 will be making it go to the left 3. So on the bottom it says when you add a number inside the absolute value, the graph shifts to the left. Okay. Look down at question number 5. Question number 5, pause the video now and graph number 5 and answer the question on the bottom. So for this question, you would have to make a table of values looking to see where your y values are the same on the top and the bottom, and your vertex should be in the middle of your table. Plot your points, put arrows on the end, and be sure to label it the absolute value of x plus 3. When you typed this into your calculator, make sure that you arrowed to the right before you typed in the +3. On the bottom, it says when you add a number outside, what happens to the graph? In this case, the graph shifts up 3. Because again, when you have a number on the outside, it will be a vertical shift in the same direction, which is why the entire graph shifted up 3. Now, take and turn to page 12. Page 12 is just going to be a quick review on domain and range. Remember, domain is the x value, and range is the y value. It's alphabetical. D comes before R, just like X comes before Y. So for your domain, keep in mind, I always want you to have 2 numbers circled on your x-axis, and for your furthest to the left and furthest to the right. For your range, I always want you to have 2 numbers circled on your y-axis, your lowest and your highest number. So look at the examples below. For your linear function, for the domain, notice that there's arrows on the end. So furthest to the left for my domain on the x would be -infinity. Furthest to the right would be +infinity. So my domain would be parentheses, -infinity to infinity. Remember, infinity signs always get parentheses. You can also write this answer as all real numbers. The range, which is going to be your y values, will be your lowest number, and since this has an arrow on the end, my lowest is negative infinity, my highest is going to be positive infinity. Remember, I want to see two things labeled on the x-axis and two on the y-axis. If you look to the right for the square root, the domain, again, which is your x, and the range is the y. For my domain, furthest to the x, up to the left, is negative 4, and furthest to the right, since there's an arrow, is infinity. Since negative 4 is a closed circle, that should be getting a bracket. Negative 4 to infinity. Closed circles get brackets. Open circles get parentheses. Another way that you can write the domain would be x is greater than or equal to negative 4. Now for the range, you would want to take and look at your lowest point, which is 0, and my highest point would be infinity. Since 0 has a closed circle here, it would be bracket 0 to infinity, or you could write y is greater than or equal to 0. Look at the next example on the bottom that says absolute value. For your absolute value, again, domain is the x, range is the y. There are arrows on the end, so furthest to the left, negative infinity, furthest to the right would be infinity. So negative infinity to infinity, with parentheses is my domain. My range, my lowest number is negative 2. My highest would be infinity. It's always considered a closed circle unless you actually see an open circle drawn in, which is why you would use a bracket. For the quadratic, again, the domain is the x. Furthest to the left, there are arrows, would be negative infinity, and the furthest to the right would be infinity. For the range, the lowest this is going is negative infinity, and the highest this is going would be 8. Again, negative infinity gets a parenthesis, and the 8 would get a bracket because it is a closed circle. Another way that you can take and write the range on this would be y is less than or equal to 8. Now, underneath it, when you're finding a domain or range from the equation, you need to take and plug it into your calculator and look at the graph. So if I were to take and type this into my calculator, I'm going to get an absolute value graph. I would want to look to see where my vertex is, and using regular graph paper would make this a little bit easier. They're looking for the range, which means my y value. So I need to circle two numbers on the y-axis. My lowest would be negative 5. My highest would be infinity. Closed circles always get brackets, which is why this would have to be from negative 5 to infinity. You may also want to take and copy down your table of values before you're graphing this so that you can see what your vertex would be, because your vertex turns out to be negative 3, negative 5. So then you can realize that the range will be talking about the y values, which is why I'm using the negative 5 up to infinity. For homework tonight, you're going to do page 7 evens in the packet. The answers will be posted tomorrow for you to check your work. You will also be doing 20 minutes of IXL tonight, sections DD 1 through 5 and FF 2 and 3. The same rules apply for IXL, either 20 minutes or an 85 in all of the sections, whichever comes first. Have a terrific Tuesday, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.